So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is a series of videos that I'm going to make. They're overdue. They should have been done some time ago, but a few things been going on in my life over the last 12 or 18 months, and just not enough days in a week or months in a year to get it all done in one go. But as it happens, and those of you who follow my pages in the Boxerworks side of things will know that we got flooded here in March in Brisbane, and through the good offices of so many good people, most of them are named on that board, although it needs to be updated, we'll know that 20 or 30 people over a period of up to 6 weeks stayed here and helped me. They're just some of the most fabulous people that I've ever known, and some of them still come in now. But we've got the workshop back together and we're processing the insurance claims one by one, and we're getting through those, going quite extensively through some of these bikes, and fixing all the issues that there can be. And some people have opted while they're doing that to go ahead and do some extra work on the bikes for them, which is slowing me down a little, but on the other hand it's a good opportunity to get their bikes up to speed for the rest of the time they intend to be riding them, so I've got no real issue with that. This is a BMW R75-7, which has been with me for some time. It has been a real mission, this bike, and has caused me all kinds of head scratches over the time it's been here. But now it's done. It has a rebuilt engine and a rebuilt gearbox. We've done a lot of work on the electrics, which were a mess, a proper mess. It has a variety of different little bits and pieces on it that have given me some fun and games to while away a winter's evening. But it's now done. I've run it in on Mount Nebo over the last few days, and I'm just doing some other things that I wanted to do to it, changing out the starter motor now that I've got the one that I actually ordered and not the one that they sent, which had the wrong number of teeth on the pinion, and a few things like that. But this is all about Wedgetail ignition systems and how to fit them. So excuse me while I grunt and groan and get down on my hands and knees. So there is a Wedgetail ignition system there. You can see the logo on the top of the shutter, the stainless steel shutter here, down here. And that replaces the points plate and the ignition points. It's quite simply the same basic idea as the points plate that was in there, except instead of a set of points on it, it's got a hall trigger, which you can, oh, if I don't get my fingers in your road, you can see right there. It's just an electronic air switch. The wiring is the same. That was a deliberate choice on our part. We did that because it means we don't have to cut things to pieces and change things around and render the bike in a situation where it can't be returned. It has an emerald isle voltage regulator there, and a lot of the wiring has been replaced in the headlight. We've also fitted it up with an LED headlight. In here, I can't light it up for at the moment because I've got the battery disconnected. Just all little jobs like that we're working on to get this bike ready for a round Australia trip, believe it or not. So to replace, when you get the Wedgetail system, I'd already fitted this one. I thought this is a perfect example to show this. It's a simple matter. Mark the old plate with a position on the plate in relation to where the side screws are, the set screws, top and bottom, and just take the plate out, put the new one in the same way, screw the screws in lightly. You can see roughly where the hall trigger sits on there, down at about 4 o'clock on the right hand side as you face the bike. The shutter has a D-shaped cutout in the centre of it, which goes over the same corresponding reverse shape on the end of the camshaft on these early bikes, and you just tighten it down once you get it all lined up and seated home. And if it's seated properly, it should be sitting, as you can see, in the, hang on, I'll try and, dear oh dear, I can't get it to go up any closer, I don't think, maybe. Yep, there you go. I might get it a bit better even still. There you go, there, look at that, I didn't know I could do that. You can see the hall trigger there on the right hand side. You can see the two adjusting slots in the shutter to move the cam plate around and tighten it up, you just simply rotate the camshaft or the crankshaft around until those slots line up at 12 and 6, and you can insert an Allen key through there and loosen or tighten the base plate without taking the shutter off. Don't tighten the nut up like a gorilla. Tighten it up to 3 or 4 foot-pound. Doesn't need any more than that. It is a lock nut and it will hold it in place. If you tighten it up too hard, you'll never get the shutter off the thing. So there's one little thing. So when you connect your ignition or convert your ignition from points ignition to a Wedgetail ignition, we have to supply you with a harness and some brackets to hold the ignition control module, because the timing advance is no longer controlled by bob weights and springs. It's controlled electronically, and I'll take you to that part of it in a minute. But right here you can see this is the harness that's supplied. That's the tail that comes out of the can. I haven't secured that yet. I'll secure it so it can't get caught in the front cover. And that's just a simplified clip. You can take it apart by pushing your thumb on there and pulling them apart. And you simply thread that down through a hole in the back there. You can see I'm trying to reach it with my finger while I'm still sitting here talking to you. It's cold here today, so I've got some woolen gloves on. Comes down through that little hole in the timing plate. Goes back in, and I've reinstalled it, but you take the starter cover off. Make sure you disconnect the battery, of course. I think I've said that already. And it goes in. Now this was an old emerald isle or red center system, and when the guy that had been installing this did it, he cut those pieces out of there. You don't need to do that. The clip came apart, but it's been done, so it's done anyway. The new ones we made have a much smaller clip on them, and they'll just feed in through one of these holes here. With this off, you feed it in, pull it down through here. Sorry, where's my hand? Here, along the side of the starter and out through that little hole in the front that I showed you. Plug it into the ignition system. Now the second part of that wiring system are these 3 wires here. You can see that there's a black one, a green one, and a brown one. And here, these are the wires that come off the 6 volt, 2 6-volt coils that usually sit on these brackets here, which I've taken off at the moment. There's another bracket. It's very hard to do this from holding a camera there. There's normally 2 brackets there and 2 6-volt coils hanging down underneath there in that space. We are replacing that with a single dyna coil, a 0.7 ohm primary resistance coil, a blue one. And I'll show you that in this movie as well. Just to replace it and modernise it and bring it up to the potential of this ignition produces a much better spark, really. But you also get in the kit the electronic module that drives this. Now, this was put in by the fellow that did this before me. It's a bracket that he's manufactured out of a couple of other brackets. Works absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We supply a different bracket, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But the trick to this is that mounted in the bike, you can actually see, I'm sorry for the jumping around, but I'm doing this by myself and it is a little difficult. This here is the control module, right? That's it there, and it's bolted on the underside. Now the clips that we send you, and I'm going to show you this, it has to be bolted that way so that if you choose to keep your 6-volt coils, this part here, this plug end, can fit in between the coils and underneath them and go down and down into the engine to control the module. If you don't fit it that way, it won't fit. It will not fit. So it has to be done the way I'm going to show you and wired the way I'm going to show you. Now I'm going to pause this for a second. So we're over here on just one of my mobile work tables. This has got all bits and pieces that I use. My other toolbox is just there with all the other bits and pieces that I use when I'm working on these things. But essentially, here's the module. This is the control module that from now on will control your timing advance curve. You can see here it has 2 windows in it. These have got a blue LED behind them. Controller and trigger. It also says made in Australia, single plug. We also do one for twin plugs. Now that's a brand new module. It comes pre-drilled for the later bikes, which we'll get to in another movie. But the whole idea of this, that is what controls your timing from now on. It is supplied in the kit with 2 of these U-shaped brackets. The shorter one goes onto the bracket underneath the fuel tank. So see this bracket here on the back of your bike, and down below it goes through, and there is a bolt under here, under there. Oh, where's my finger, please? There's a bolt that comes down through there and onto that plate. That's where these brackets here go, these ones. And they must face backwards like that. Right, now there's a reason for me telling you this. They must face backwards like that. They must go on like that. Underneath there, where I'm showing you, and facing to the rear. Okay? Now when you do that, sorry, again I'm trying to work in 2 places at once. This module will be mounted with the plug facing towards the front of the bike, and this bracket will be facing to the rear. So it will be sitting on there like that, hanging out of the bottom of the fuel tank rear mounting, well, I guess you'd call them bolts. They're cushioned bolts. So one either side. There's 2 of those. And the reason for that is, first of all, it allows you to move the bracket back as far as you can, away from the back of the coils, to give you room to run that, that harness wire through and into the top of the starter motor housing. And it also gives you the opportunity, if you need to offset it slightly, because you can actually, you can actually get these and turn them at a slight angle and actually move the module slightly to the left or right to get the right position. You can see they're slotted to give you a certain amount, but if you turn this to the left or right, oh man, this is really hard to do. Like that, if you turn them both like that, you're going to move the module to the right-hand side, to the left-hand side of the bike as you're sitting on it. If you turn it the other way, you're going to move it to the right-hand side as you're sitting on it. It doesn't have to be much, usually only a few millimetres, just to get the thing centralised. But that's why the brackets are made like that, and that's why they work like that. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you back over to the bike. Now the Wedgetail ignition system has been designed to take any number of different kinds of coils. If you buy certain automotive coils and things of that nature, you're going to give yourself a pain in the neck, because you've got to change the fitting and the wiring and other things on them to make them fit or work within the system that you're using. But by and large, this system has been engineered this way. If you look on here, there is a green wire. This wire here is a secondary wire that's been fitted by the guy that restored this bike. There's a green wire there with a blue stripe on it. Now BMW, in their wisdom, if you've got what we call live or hot power, the wire is always red. And if it's switch power, it's always green. So switch power means power that comes live when you turn the ignition on. So the green wire there will give you, with a blue stripe, will tell you that it's an ignition wire. The colour of the stripe, according to the owner's manual, tells you what the application is. So green wire is generally switched wire. A red wire is usually live power. A brown wire is earth. And a black wire is negative. This 3 wires here, that comes with the kit. You can see it goes into the plug on the module there, and that plug goes down through the starter housing and comes out at the front of the engine where I showed you before. So what do you do? Well, this is just a simple spade bit that's been shrouded, because it's going to have power going through it, so if anything accidentally touches it, it won't short out. That goes onto the positive side of the coil. So on your old twin coils, when you had a coil hanging here where my hand is and another one on the other side, the black wire from the points went onto the negative side of the coil on the right side of the bike generally. On the positive side of that coil was a short jumper wire that came from the positive on this side to the negative of the coil on this side, and then on the positive of the coil on this side came your switch power. So the power went onto the left-hand coil, wired in series through that bridge wire to the right-hand coil, and when the black wire was triggered by the points, it collapsed the fields in both of those coils and charged one to discharge into each cylinder. Now, if you replace it with a twin pole coil, it works the same way. They're a more efficient coil with a better spark. This still drives it. So if I pause this again for a second and get a dyno coil that I've wired up to fit in here, I'll show you. So here we are. This is a bracket that's made for the dyno, and on there, on each end of there, I've put two twin pole or twin spade connectors, one into each side, like looking at it like that. Now, if you have a look, that looks awful close, but these aren't high tension things. They don't throw sparks. You just got to make sure you got that sort of clearance around any piece of metal, and you will never have a problem with it. It won't throw a spark onto the coil in any circumstance. So what we do is we put that coil will go in on the other side over here and sit in there like that. So it's only a single coil like that. And what we will do is on this outside area here, so this one here, we'll plug the black, now wait a minute, I've got to make sure I got this the right way. Yeah, we'll plug on this side here nearest to me, we'll plug that green wire I just showed you, plus the green wire that came with our kit, this one. So what that does is when you turn on the ignition, that powers the coil, and this one here, this green one here that I've just let go, it actually powers the ignition module, which requires a power supply to work. Okay? The brown one's obvious, that's an earth wire, this brown one here, and it should go onto an earth pole. You should make sure that the connectors are absolutely clean and spotless when you do those up. They old, these ones, but they're on here, but they've been cleaned up with some light emery paper and polished and burnished, so there's a good connector, and sprayed then with some preservative. This is a brand new one that will go on there in a minute. You must have that earth, and it must be a good earth for the thing to work properly. So make sure you take the time to prepare it. The black wire here, it does the same thing as the old black wire used to, so it will actually go on this side of the coil, and it's the thing that the electronic control module sends a pulse down that coil to fire, down that wire to fire the coil. So you've got power in from the ignition, power from the same bracket to the module to power the module, an earth wire to earth it out, and the black trigger wire on the other side of the dyno coil to collapse the fields and cause the coil to fire. Now that applies to any kind of coil you put on here. If you put any single coil on, it will have to be earthed. That module needs to be earthed. That's irrespective of the coil. You must have a green power side and you must have a black fire side. On a dyno coil, it doesn't matter which way you put it. You can wire them left or right, it doesn't matter. I put the bracket in with the offset that way, so when it goes on the frame, sorry, I think I might have had that the wrong way around, I did. When it goes on the frame, it actually tilts the coil in so it's in line with the center line of the bike. So when I said that, I'm not going to remake the whole movie, just work it out from the point of view, if the coil is on this side, this is what happens when you're looking in a camera and you're trying to do things. It will actually sit there like that, and the plug wires will come out and around and down to their plugs on either side. The whole idea of that is to keep it out of the way of the fuel tank so you can get it on and off easily. And if you have a look on these brackets, I've used little captive nuts on there using a nut press and pulled them on, so if you want to take the coil off, you can just take the whole thing off as one assembly and take it out of your road when you're working on the bike to service it. Some of these things I'm reusing bits and pieces that were on this bike before to try and keep the cost down for the owner. But there you go. Once you've done that, on the next short video, and part 2 will be a short video, I'll show you what to do once it's all in and assembled. Take care. and I hope this has helped a little bit. We'll see what happens.